Hi and welcome to Merryweather Knitting. My name is Gabriella and today I'm coming to you with some sleeves on the needles ready for a little knit and chat as I answer some questions that were submitted to me for a Q&A video. I had asked quite a while ago for questions for a Q&A video and I received some wonderful questions, so thank you so much to those of you who asked me questions. I don't know what it is about question and answer videos, but I always love watching them. I think it's so much fun to get to know people who I enjoy watching online, and so I hope that you'll get to know me a little bit better in this video, and I'd love to hear from you as well in the comments as you watch if you have thoughts or if you have answers to some of the questions I'm asking too, or I've been asked. I really enjoyed seeing what people were interested in knowing, and I think this is going to be part one of a two-part video situation. I'm going to record another video because I was asked a lot of questions about living in Germany, how I moved here, why I moved here, how I met my husband, all those kinds of questions. A lot of people wanted to know those things, and I know I'm going to end up talking a lot, telling those stories. So I thought I would save those questions for another video, and today I'll just answer the few questions that are about other things, you know, about knitting and creative things, personal things. So I hope you enjoy. I thought I would start with a question which fits very well with this topic of knitting and fiber crafts. And I have right here all my questions written down in my notebook, so I'm going to be referencing it. And as I said, I'm just going to be knitting. So if you have a craft you're working on, if you have a project that you're knitting on, join me. I think it's so much fun to knit together, and it's just very relaxed to sit and chat while I knit. So I learned to knit first, well, I always thought I had first learned to knit when I was about 16 or 17. But I recently realized, as I was, you know, in the throes of a daydream and kind of just in the reveries of my memories, and I was just thinking about, as I was a child, when I was a child, I actually received a book, a how to knit book. And I think there's a brand called Klutz or something like that, something similar. If I find a picture of this book or a picture of the brand's logo, I will put it here for you to see. But this was a company or a publishing house that had lots of books and kind of kits for young children to learn different crafts. And I think they were really geared towards girls. They were really cool, like, everything about it was kind of cool. The font was cool, everything was just fun. And I remember, I think I got as a gift this how to knit book, and in this book, or a kind of kit, there were a pair of knitting needles and some yarn. And in this book, I don't think I really learned to knit. I think I was too frustrated. No one in my life knew how to knit, and so I completely taught myself. But I do have a very vivid memory of reading the instructions for how to wind a ball from a skein, or yeah, how to wind a ball of yarn. And I remember winding the ball of yarn and figuring it out and hanging the little bit of yarn over, I don't know, a chair or something, and then kind of just going on and yeah, trying to learn to knit, but not being able to figure it out, not being able to figure out a slip knot. It took me so long to figure out how to make a slip knot. Honestly, I think like I still sometimes watch videos on how to make a slip knot because I don't know what it is, but I forget. And I end up mostly casting on using the long tail cast on method, or the German twisted cast on, I think that's what it's called. And I don't think you really need a slip knot for those, but yeah, that was how I first was introduced to knitting, I believe. But I had forgotten about that. I really had completely forgotten about that whole experience. And when I was a teenager, yeah, 16 or 17, I think, maybe a little bit younger, I was really into sewing, and I liked sewing clothes. I have always loved like vintage things and historical things, and I was really into just kind of getting sewing patterns and trying to sew things. And I really wanted my sister to get into something like that with me. We were homeschooled, and a lot of what we did was we did a lot of creative things. We had a lot of free time during the day to explore our interests and kind of study and do different things. And we read a lot of books and made lots of different experiments with different kind of crafts and things like that. But I really wanted her to experience the joy of making things yourself. And so we were in Joann Fabrics together. I took her with me, and I saw in Joann Fabrics this knitting or fiber arts crochet kind of section where there's all this yarn and these needles. And I was so excited by it. I thought, you know what, this is perfect for you. I wanted to live vicariously through her. I think I, at that moment, didn't think about knitting for myself. I was really into sewing. So I told her, like, now's the chance. I'll buy you a pair of needles and some yarn, pick a color. And I remember trying to find wool yarn because I have also really enjoyed, since I was like young, kind of natural things, getting back to nature, things like that. So I really thought it would be nice and cool to have a natural fiber like wool. I was just drawn to that already. So I got some wool yarn for her. I remember it was like a dark gray. And on the ball band, there was the kind of needle size, suggested needle size. So I just trusted that, and I think I got size 8, must have been like worsted weight yarn and size 8 needles. And it was all very affordable and very fun, and we took it home, and they were just straight needles. I think that's what non-knitters associate with knitting very much. I don't think I had ever known that there was such a thing as like circular needles, or that was something which was just not in any way on my radar. But yeah, I took them home, and we looked online on YouTube and found a tutorial, and that's when it started with the slip knot. Again, I must have figured out the slip knot, because I feel like so many of the tutorials online show you how to make a slip knot first, or have you make a slip knot. But it could have been that I did the long tail cast on without the slip knot already. I'm not sure. I don't remember the details. But long story short, I ended up being the one, as we watched these videos, I ended up being the one who was kind of knitting and learning the whole process, and she was just kind of sitting there watching me do it, because I was so excited by it. I thought it was so much fun. I thought it was like, I was just enthralled with the process and really excited to see the stitches appear. And so I was like, oh, look, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. Like, you see. And then I let her try it, and I think she tried a little bit, but then I just took it back and kept going. And in the end, I was the one who got into knitting. And I took that tutorial and that yarn and those needles, and my sister really wasn't that into it. I was kind of forcing her to knit, and she didn't really want to. So that was my sister, who's my second sister. I'm the oldest of 5 children. I have 5 younger siblings, but she wasn't that into it. So I took it, and I remember finding on YouTube another tutorial for fingerless mitts, and it was just basically a square of garter stitch, knit back and forth in the flat, and then seamed on the side, leaving a hole. So I think that was my first project. I made that, and then that was too boring, so I learned to purl, and I remember thinking, like, purling is hard, and then learning it and realizing, oh wait, it's not that hard, and the rest is history. The ball just kept rolling. I enjoyed it so much. I don't remember what I started to knit next, but I found Ravelry and found so many beautiful patterns, and was kind of amazed at the possibilities that there are and that there were to have things to make. I at some point started knitting socks, and I just loved the process. And yeah, I even found YouTube and found kind of like knitting podcasters too, pretty early on in my knitting journey, like a year or so afterwards. But what always stuck with me and struck me when I was already, when I was just beginning, was how relaxing and meditative the process of knitting was and is. And I remember just doing things, or working, or doing schoolwork, or I also had a job pretty young, my first job, and I had an apprenticeship and learned to become a florist. And being a florist is a very high stress job. It's beautiful and lovely, and it smells wonderful, but it is a very high stress job. You're on your feet all day long, and you're dealing with customers. It is like a retail job. You're dealing with people. Sometimes people aren't very polite. Deadlines, which are tight, and flowers have to be fresh. So it was like a pretty intense, job to have, and a lot of cleaning, like intense cleaning, because flowers can get dirty, like vegetable matter. Long story short, it was an amazing experience, and I loved being a florist. I was a florist for quite a while, and up till moving to Germany, that was my kind of main job and what I love to do. But I at the end of the day, it was so nice to kind of like shut my brain off and just knit and watch something grow, and it was just so meditative and lovely. So that is how I learned to knit, and that's the answer to that first question. And a very long answer. I already knew that I would take too long answering these questions, which is why I'm glad I'm making 2 videos. The next question I'll answer is, what is or was your favorite knit you've ever knitted? And thank you so much to everyone who said they enjoyed watching my podcast. It means so much to me to hear that. Honestly, like, this community is just such a gift. So I can't say it enough. I can't like say often enough and express properly how much it means to me that we can be in touch and that we can share in our love of creative arts and in our love of knitting and fiber arts. But okay, my favorite knit that I've ever made, honestly, I think it's very hard to say what my I think I know my favorite one I've ever made that's like a finished object, and that has to be the first bonnet I ever knit my daughter Esmeralda. I don't know what it is about that bonnet, but it was a very quick knit, fast, very simple like bonnet, very a basic bonnet, but it had like lace. I think it was called the Mod bonnet, and I just knit it last year, but there's something about that project which is just so meaningful to me and so sentimental, not because it was a big challenge or like a big mountain to climb or because of the yarn. I think I just had some stash worsted weight, pretty simple like wool blended yarn that I used. It wasn't really special in any of those ways. It's just the material, like the material side wasn't the meaningful part. It's just the sentimental side of it, because I put this bonnet on her like every single day after I made it, and I watched her grow into it and then grow out of this bonnet. Like when I first finished it, it was pretty big on her, but I would put it on her and we'd go on our walks, and then through the whole fall and winter and spring she wore it like constantly, and I always just had so much joy putting it on her. I just made it with so much love and put it on her with so much love and kept her warm with so much love, and then I watched her get too big for it, and now it's like packed away because it's too small. And I think that's the most sentimental, my most meaningful knit. I don't know, a little cheesy, but I think it's just so special to me, and I think it's probably a symbol too, because I know there are going to be, there have been already other knits that she's worn that I've made for her, like a little sweater that she's grown out of already, but it's the first of so many that I know she's going to wear and kind of use and then grow out of, and just that process, I don't know, that's my favorite piece I've ever made. But I think the second favorite piece, knitted object, that I've ever made is the one I'm working on actually at this exact moment, and that's my Elizabeth I. It's my very first pattern that I've ever knit and I'm ever knitting, by Alice Starmore, and there's just something about the whole process and the yarn, just everything about this experience has been such a special one to me, and I think it's going to be a really gorgeous piece to wear. So this might be my next favorite knitted object, I think, once it's finished. I just like love it looking at these sleeves every time. I know I talk about this probably too much, but there's just these gorgeous huge sleeves, and I keep like pausing my knitting and like doing this on my hand and picturing how it's going to look, and it makes me just so thrilled to have it done and to wear it. It's just so much fun. The next question is, what is my all-time favorite yarn? And I don't think I have the experience yet to really say my all-time favorite yarn. To make a big statement, because I've only tried such a small variety of all the yarns there are out there in the world. There's so many that I want to try and so many that I want to knit with and make things out of. But I would say, as far as categories go of yarn, I definitely know that I'm a big fan of I think, as of right now, I think it might change in the future, but I really enjoy rustic yarns, and I do really enjoy kind of woolly yarns, like yarns that are sheepy and that are kind of not super silky or soft. That's right now my vibe, I think. I really love, like right now, even this Virtual Yarns yarn, it is soft and it is like, it's very luxurious, but it still has a bit of sheepiness and a bit of this kind of like grippiness. It's worsted spun. that I don't know what it is about the process. I just love it, and I love to wear it, and I love to have it in my hands. I think there are times where I think I kind of crave a little bit of merino, a little bit of cashmere, something silky, something soft. I think that there's a time and a place for all kinds of yarns and materials, you know, superwash, non-superwash, acrylic. There are really times and places for each of those, you know, yarns and fibers and finishes, processing methods, all kinds of things. But I really like sheepier yarns. I think especially for sweaters, I enjoy like a little bit of grip and worsted spun yarn. And yeah, it's also like the gauge I've learned that I really enjoy right now is a tighter gauge. I think, I mean, like I said, there's a time and place for everything, but I do like this kind of tightly woven closed fabric a lot at the moment. But it's hard to make a big statement because I think that there are wonderful things about all different kinds of yarns and fibers and gauges and all kinds of things. And colorways, there's like such a variety of colorways I could never choose. Like I do love hand-dyed yarn and beautiful colorful yarn and like speckled yarn and tweeds, but I also love like solids. It's hard to choose. I don't think I have a huge like type. Even like a color family. I don't know if I even have like necessarily a color family. I think I have colors that I am drawn towards more than others, or some that I'm maybe not at all drawn toward. But I feel like I like so many things. I always feel like there's just a time for everything. But the next question that I wrote down here is, what knitting needles do I use? And I use Chiaogu interchangeables. I have a set of Chiaogu interchangeable needles which were gifted to me a long time ago when I was, a couple of years into my knitting journey, and I'm so thankful for this set. I use them all the time. I've supplemented this set a little bit here and there with like another needle size or another needle length because they come in shorter and longer needle ends. So I've added a couple of things, and I've added like another cable or two. But I really enjoy these Chiaogus. I have no complaints. There are times when I hear and see other people's needles and I get a little bit of like, I'm a little bit envious, and I sometimes think like, ooh, I would love like a bamboo set or a wooden set, or just to try like another brand. But at the end of the day, I want to put my money that I have in my little tiny yarn budget, I want to put it into wool and yarn, because I have perfect needles that do the job wonderfully, and I'm so thankful for them. And I really do like working with stainless steel because as my recent experience with wooden needles, one of them broke, and that was just tragic. So I'm very thankful for these stainless steel Chiaogu red lace needles, a needle set. And I can definitely recommend them if you are on the market for an interchangeable needle set. Like, this one is amazing. I have like the combination one that has both like small and large. I am definitely also tempted by this mini set because I love to knit with 9-inch circulars for socks. I also have not the interchangeable, I have the Chiaogu DPN set. I think it's like US 0 to US 2 sizes or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but Chiaogu is my main needle brand, and I enjoy it a lot at the moment. We'll see. It's like, I always feel like too, it's such a long-term relationship when you're a crafter, and for me, I know this is one that I'm going to stick to and I've stuck to for a long time. I kind of like cycle through different creative endeavors here and there, different crafts, different hobbies. Nick sometimes like makes fun of that because there have been a couple things that I've started and just not followed through with, so I have to be careful and not like invest too much into a new hobby because it's dangerous for me. But I know knitting is now like stood the test of time already, and it's going to probably be something that accompanies me through my life, I hope. And if that's the case, there's probably going to be a time where I, in the future, maybe get a new set of needles or two, or try out new yarn. And I always think it's really fun to have your tastes and your preferences expand and shift through different stages of life, if that makes sense. So I think that applies to needles as well. The next question is if I'm plant-based and what my meal plan looks like, which I thought it was so fun that this was a question because I love to share my meals on Instagram sometimes. Like, every now and then I just like to take photos of them and show the process. I love cooking. I love being in the kitchen. This last year I've had the kind of goal to try to make like 99% of everything that we eat from scratch, and it's been so much fun. I have always done that to some extent, but I wanted to really like take it seriously this year, and I've been doing that a lot, and it's just been so much fun. I am plant-based. I've been plant-based for a long time. I think for almost 12 years almost. I think it's been 12 years since I first went like vegetarian, and 11 years since I kind of went vegan, but I will say plant-based. I knit with wool. I do wear leather and buy leather. I'm not like, 100% vegan in that way, but I'm plant-based, and I've been eating plant-based for 11 years. And so I have loved it. It's just kind of, I guess you could say diet or like lifestyle that has worked best for me and my body and my family. But my meal plan is kind of pretty simple, honestly. I have been cooking everything homemade, but what that has also meant, it's not meant only that I've had like a ton of more work because I'm making like all my bread homemade or anything like that. I try to make homemade bread and focaccia and things like that, but most of the time what it means is that we eat very simple, basic meals, very simple whole food based meals. So a lot of our meals are like whole grains, legumes, vegetables, like pretty much all we eat are like whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, vegetables, and fruit. And yeah, like that's pretty much like all of that's pretty much covers everything. It's true. I mean, my husband and Esmeralda, also saying like plant-based doesn't mean strict. We have sometimes like a little bit of eggs. We have friends who have honey, and we get honey from them, and we enjoy, so sometimes Esmeralda and Nick also enjoy like a little bit of cheese and kind of milk products, but not only cow's milk, but also like sheep milk and goat's milk, all kinds of things like that. Nick also eats meat sometimes, but for me, I like pretty much just plants mostly. I mean, yeah, I do have some honey sometimes, but I really enjoy it, and it's really a lot of fun to experiment and also to keep it simple. I feel so good eating just those simple food groups, and there's so much you can do with those things. And yeah, I really love it. But our meal plan is, yeah, basically those things we eat mostly for breakfast, like porridge or like oatmeal, or like sometimes I make porridges from different whole grains and add vegetables to them or fruit depending on the day, and have like nuts or nut butter and like lots of flax seeds. And like lunches are usually, yeah, we eat sometimes like salads and greens with grains and beans, and it sounds pretty simple, and it is very simple, but it's delicious and we love it. And I like feel so good. And a lot of also like I like to right now, I've been really into getting back to fermenting vegetables and making like sauerkraut and different kind of like pickles homemade. I really enjoy that, and I feel like it adds such flavor and like so many new dimensions to meals when you have like fermented vegetables too. Anyway, those are kind of the meals that we eat. And I read a really good book. If anyone's interested in fermenting vegetables or making their own sauerkraut or even your own cheese or anything, there's this book by the author Sandor Alex Katz called Wild Fermentation. And I read that a long, long time ago, like when I first became vegan, or I guess plant-based, and I loved it. And it kind of like really shaped so much of what I see with health, and really like introduced me to a huge world of flavors. So you should definitely check that book out if you're in any way interested in vegetable fermentation or lacto fermentation. It's so easy and so healthy and so fun. And you can also, of course, like there's cheese and stuff there too. And then I read his second book called The Art of Fermentation, which is like an encyclopedia of information about fermentation and its history and its benefits and all kinds of things like that, which was really fun. But anyway, the last question I have was my favorite music, and my favorite music is any music that my husband makes. Nick is a musician, and I love his music, and I love his voice. And I think my favorite music is when he just sits somewhere in our home and plays the guitar and sings. He's got the most beautiful voice. He plays all kinds of different music too, from like classic rock to like folk to country music, and I love it all. I'm such a huge fan of whatever he plays and whatever he makes. And in Christmas, we like always, or on holidays, we always like gather around, and he and I have been, thought a lot about how we want to intentionally kind of make our family culture. Our family's very young. We just have a tiny girl, tiny baby, but we really love music and love the way that it kind of brings people together. And Esmeralda loves music too already. She dances and like drums, and she like plays her little xylophone with so much gusto and joy. So I really value that and think music is such a special part of life. And yeah, right now I'm really into kind of like folk, and also I'm really into like French pop. I've been into French pop since I was like a teenager, and there was a long time where I didn't listen to any and wasn't into it, but right now I'm really back into like 70s, 60s French pop. It's just kind of like fun, and I love the ambiance it gives my life and how it makes me feel, and just the kind of like soundtrack it gives, because I think the music you listen to kind of gives your life a certain soundtrack, and depending on the day there are different kind of things I want to embody in my kind of vibe and attitude. And I just think French pop is really fun and playful and cool, and so I listen to a lot of that in my free time. And I also, but pretty much also daily listening to gospel music. I also really love like Mennonite music. They don't have instruments and they just use their voices as they sing, and so it's very relaxing and calming. And when I clean, I love to like put on kind of Mennonite hymns and listen to the hymns. And I also love like old country. I'm not the biggest fan of like current modern country music, but I do love like old country and folk and all those kinds of things. And I also really like, sometimes I'm really into hip hop too, also like older hip hop. And like older, not kind of current things I'm not that into. I don't know why. I guess it's just like the vintage soul. Just kidding. But yeah. I also love like, sometimes there's moments where I like Latin music, and yeah, sometimes you just have to put on some like cumbia music and like dance with your husband, which I do, which my husband doesn't dance with me. I just kind of like dance alone, and he's kind of like, okay, whatever, ignoring me. But I love Latin music too. And yeah, I'd love to really learn to dance. Like with my mom and my sisters, we like kind of dance, but not like real dancers. I would really love to learn tango, like going back to my family, like Argentine roots. I would love to like learn to tango at some point. And Nick said that he would with me one day. So maybe when we're older, we will learn to tango together, and we will like go to dance classes and just tango classes and do that. But right now it's not gonna happen. I mean right now we're like too busy, but one day I would love to do it. And I know that he would do it with me. With him I'd have to kind of pull him along with those things, but it'll work. Anyway, those are all the questions. Thank you so much for asking them, and I'm so glad that you were here and joined me for a little bit of a knit and chat. I can't wait to return to you with the second part of this video, more questions. I'd love to hear from you, what your favorite music is, and all kinds of different things, your favorite yarn, your favorite needles, all in the comments below. Wishing you a wonderful week, and look forward to seeing you again soon.